So this whole argument of double taxation avoidance agreements is not something you buy.
Double taxation doesn't have anything to do with asset hiding.
Yep.
So it just simply doesn't cover asset hiding. In terms of putting money offshore, it can cover that, but the citizen concerned can't be Indian. So I mean, we have had a similar issue in Australia where most of the share owners of the mining companies were from overseas, from the United States, and the dividends were being paid off to the United States, and so there was no tax on all those dividends. And the Australian government decided that it would introduce a special tax on the mining companies because the mining industry was making so much money and other industries weren't. It was completely possible to do. The Australian government decided to do it, although quite interestingly, its case, the mining lobby then all got together and rolled the Prime Minister, Kevin Rudd, and put another person in his place, Julia Gillard. And the cables we released showed some of the scheming that had been going on to roll the Prime Minister. So, you see, in the Australian case, it was perfectly possible to do legally. It wasn't possible to do politically. And the Australian Prime Minister, Kevin Rudd, lost his prime ministership as a result.
The biggest issue in India today is, the secrecy on Swiss banks, and I'm sure you are aware of the public interest in India about it. This is a debate that's been going on for 3 decades. What do you think about it? About the secret Swiss bank accounts. I'm sure you've heard about the enormous amount of ill-gotten Indian wealth which lies in Swiss banks.
I have seen a report from this. It may have been EU as opposed to Swiss, but an official report saying that there are more Indian deposits in Swiss banks than any other nationality. So that should be a concern. In the work I did in Africa, I discovered that $3 billion had been sucked out of Kenya and pushed around the world, including into Swiss banks. And it struck me that this was much worse than local corruption. Because when you have local corruption, when someone steals from a ministry and puts it into their company, say within India, and then spends it in India, well, even if the government is losing the money, at least the people of India are not losing the money.
Absolutely.
But when the money is taken, it's pushed offshore, then every time someone sends $1 million to a Swiss bank, they are buying Swiss francs and they're selling rupees.
Yes.
And the result is that the currency of the nation is debased. And so that there's a double effect in the corruption.
Completely.
Everything for all Indians becomes more expensive as a result of that transfer. We, a few years ago in 2008, published a series of accounts of Swiss bank holders in the Cayman Islands. And the Cayman Islands was being used by people around the world to hide assets and to evade tax. In order to open one of these bank accounts with the bank Julius Baer, the largest private Swiss banking concern, one needed at least $1 million in cash. So this is not, when we speak about banking here, we're not talking about normal banking. And that's a defense that these banks often use. They say, oh, you like your bank account to be private, don't you? Well, this is just the same sort of thing.
Exactly.
This is absolutely not the same sort of thing. It's wrong to call this banking. It is something else. It is asset hiding. And they use laws in Caribbean islands like the Cayman Islands. They use complex trust structures. It is not anything like a normal bank account. They position lawyers,
transfer funds,
transfer funds all over the place. Make sure there's no accessible names, use secrecy laws, etc. And the only reason why you would be wanting to put your money into a Swiss bank-controlled place like the Cayman Islands is to hide assets. It's actually quite expensive to do. You need, looking at the documentation we saw in that period, it was about 15 to 25,000 US dollars per year just to keep the account. Why would someone be paying so much money
Absolutely.
to do that?